The land between two rivers. You breathe in slowly as the sound of distant water fills your mind. The air feels thick with warmth, the kind that comes just before sunrise in a vast and ancient land. Around you stretches a plain of rich, dark earth, the color of fertile promise cut through by two winding rivers that glimmer beneath the faintest touch of dawn. This is Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, cradle of the world's first great civilizations. The Tigris flows swift and sharp, restless and unpredictable. The Euphrates, wide and slow, moves with patient grace. Between them lies the birthplace of everything that would one day become human society, cities, kings, temples, stories and law. You close your eyes and the murmur of the rivers becomes a heartbeat, steady, eternal. Long before marble palaces or iron swords, before empires and emperors, people gathered here among reeds and mud brick huts, shaping clay and hope into something enduring. These were the first farmers, men and women who looked up from the soil to read the heavens. They watched the flooding of the rivers, learned its rhythm, and whispered thanks to unseen gods for the waters that gave life, and sometimes took it away. Thousands of years before the time of Christ, before pyramids rose in Egypt, this plain between the rivers already carried the pulse of human invention. The land was both a blessing and a test. Its floods could turn dry soil into gardens or drown entire villages overnight, so the people learned to tame the water. They built canals and dikes, carved irrigation channels through the fields, and measured the seasons by the river's moods. It was not just agriculture they were inventing, it was civilization itself, the delicate art of order in a world of chaos. Imagine it, the smell of wet clay, the hum of insects, the soft slap of water against reeds as people wade through the shallows planting barley and wheat. Oxen pull wooden plows across the damp soil, while children chase each other through furrows. Smoke curls upward from small fires where bread bakes on flat stones. It is a peaceful, slow rhythm, the rhythm of beginnings. At night, when the heat of the day fades, the stars come alive above the plain. There are no cities, yet only scattered villages, each glowing with the faint orange light of fire pits. You watch as the elders tilt their faces toward the heavens, tracing patterns among the stars. They see gods and spirits in the constellations, guardians of the harvest bringers, of rain, keepers of life and death. In the sky they find both comfort and meaning. Later their descendants will mark these same stars on clay tablets, naming them, tracking their motion, creating the world's first science, astronomy, born from awe. But the land is restless. The rivers, though generous, are unpredictable. Some years they flood too early, some too late. Crops fail and hunger spreads. People begin to pray not only to thank the gods, but to plead with them to calm the waters, to save their homes. And so slowly religion grows. Small shrines of mud and reed rise beside the fields, offerings placed within bits of grain, polished stones, tiny figurines of animals. The people hope their devotion will please the forces that govern their world. From these first acts of worship, a new kind of order begins to take shape, a moral order bound to the rhythms of the earth and the heavens. Every harvest, every flood, every breath of wind seems touched by unseen will. And in this deep awareness, humanity begins to dream larger dreams, not just of surviving, but of belonging to something greater than themselves. Generations pass, villages grow, Traders move along the rivers with boats of woven reeds carrying goods and stories from one settlement to another. They bring obsidian from the north, copper from the mountains, shells from distant seas. Trade becomes connection, and with it comes the need for record, for memory that outlives speech. Though the people do not yet have writing, they use small clay tokens to count their goods. Each token stands for a measure of grain, a number of sheep, a jar of oil. In their hands you see the first fragile sparks of accounting, the foundation of writing itself waiting to be born. The air hums with invention. By day the riverbanks are alive with voices, farmers, potters, herders, weavers. By night the desert wind carries the smell of wet earth and smoke from cooking fires. There is laughter music made from reed pipes, the pounding of feet on packed earth as they dance in circles beneath the moon. These people, who will one day be called Sumerians, are still close to the land, but already you can sense the rising tide of complexity that will soon carry them beyond mere survival. The rivers, too, are more than water. They are symbols, reflections of time itself, ever flowing, ever changing. You imagine one day when these same waters will mirror great walls, temple towers, and gardens suspended in air. But for now it is only the beginning, and the quiet beauty of creation fills the air. Occasionally the rivers run red with silt after heavy storms. You watch the people as they gather at the banks, fearful yet reverent. To them the flood is the voice of the gods, sometimes kind, sometimes cruel. Out of this awe will rise myths that will one day shape the stories of Noah, of Utnapishtim, of the great flood that cleansed the world. But tonight, under the stars, the people simply wait, listening to the water's endless whisper. In this land between rivers, humanity is learning its greatest lesson, that life, fragile as it is, can be shaped by hands, guided by reason and softened by belief. The soil, dark and heavy with silt, will feed millions. The stars above will become the first calendar. The rivers will teach endurance, and the storms will teach humility. Civilization does not spring from conquest or wealth, but from patient rhythm, the same rhythm that beats within the human heart. You stand now on a small rise overlooking the plain. The dawn is breaking in a wash of gold and blue. The rivers gleam like veins of light. In the distance, smoke curls from the hearths of the first farmers, rising toward a sky that still seems infinite. You realize that every empire, every city, every poem that will come after all began here between these rivers, in the hush of morning and the breath of clay. The wind carries the scent of wet soil and new beginnings. And as you close your eyes, you hear the rivers whisper again, "Remember me." For this is where the story of civilization truly began. Sumer, the first cities of the world. The years drift by like slow-moving water, and before you know it, centuries have passed over the land between the rivers. The simple villages of farmers and traders begin to change. The mud brick huts grow larger, the walls thicker, the fields broader and more intricate with canals. Humanity's hands, patient and clever, begin to shape permanence out of impermanence. The plain of Mesopotamia hums with life. From the mist of dawn you watch as people gather on the banks of the Euphrates, hauling heavy clay to build walls higher than ever before. The rivers are no longer wild guardians, they are now partners in a grand human experiment. Each flood that once destroyed now feeds the canals that nourish barley, wheat, and date palms. And in the stillness between the floods, something wondrous begins to rise from the soil cities. The first small and scattered are little more than fortified villages, but soon their walls climb upward, their temples multiply, and their names will echo across time: Eridu, Lagash, Nippur, and above all, Uruk. You hear the word whispered among traders in markets filled with bleating goats and fragrant oil, Uruk, the shining city of the south. You walk its streets as dusk settles over the plain. The scent of burning reeds and cooking grain fills the air. The houses are packed close together, made of baked brick and decorated with clay cones pressed into patterns along the walls. Children run barefoot through narrow alleys while the voices of merchants echo from open courtyards. Over it all rises a massive temple, its base solid, its tiers stacked like steps to the heavens. This is a ziggurat, and at its summit rests a shrine to the city's patron deity, the goddess Inanna, Lady of Love and War. The temple glows in the torchlight, its bricks warm from the day's sun. Around its base, priests move like shadows, their linen robes whispering against the stone. Inside, the air smells of incense and oil. Offerings of grain dates and small clay figures are laid before Inanna's statue, her face serene, her eyes watching everything. You can almost hear the murmured prayers of the city's people. May the rivers flow, may the harvest be strong, may the goddess protect us from the storm. Sumer's people believe that each city belongs to a god. The god's temple is its heart, its priests the keepers of its rhythm. They are the ones who read the signs in the heavens, who mark the calendar, who interpret dreams. Beside them stand kings, rulers, chosen, it is said, by divine favor. Together, priest and king hold the balance of heaven and earth. You sense the order forming here, the first model of government, the first sense of law. In the temple's shadow, scribes gather with tablets of damp clay, carving small wedge-shaped symbols into their surface. These are early records, lists of grain rations, names of workers, measures of silver. Each mark pressed with a reed stylus, each tablet a fragment of memory. The people of Sumer are inventing writing, though they may not yet understand how deeply it will change the world. As night falls, the streets quiet. A flute plays softly from a balcony. The light of small fires flickers through open doorways, illuminating clay jars and low tables covered with bowls of stewed lentils and bread. The people eat together, talk quietly, and rest after the long day. But above them, from the top of the ziggurat, the priests still keep watch. They chart the paths of stars, note the rising of Venus, the bright morning star of Inanna. From these careful observations, calendars are born. The measurement of time itself begins. You walk beyond the city walls and look back. Uruk glows in the dark, a jewel of clay and fire. Beyond it stretch endless fields and canals dotted with flickering lamps. In those fields the hum of insects mingles with the croak of frogs, the steady breath of the rivers. Civilization is alive now, complex, radiant, restless. Trade routes stretch outward like veins. From the mountains of Anatolia comes copper, from faraway lands, wood and precious stones. Boats heavy with goods glide down the Euphrates, their sails catching the evening breeze. The city is no longer just a home, it is a living organism pulsing with exchange and ambition, and yet with growth comes struggle. Farmers argue over water, neighboring cities clash for territory. The kings begin to speak not only of gods but of armies. Walls grow taller, gates stronger. Bronze weapons gleam in the torchlight. It is the first shadow of empire, faint but unmistakable. Still amid the tension, art flourishes. Clay figurines of goddesses and bulls line temple shelves. Cylinder seals carved with intricate scenes of rituals and animals serve as signatures, symbols of identity. Music fills the evening's harps and drums the soft beat of rhythm that seems to rise from the earth itself. You find yourself standing once more before the ziggurat, its top lost in the dark sky. The air is still except for the rustle of palm leaves and the far-off cry of an owl. The priest beside you holds a small lamp, its flame trembling in the wind. He looks at the stars and smiles faintly. "We are but dust," he whispers, "but the gods have taught us how to make dust eternal." You understand what he means? The Sumerians, with their clay, their canals, their prayers, are building something that will outlast them all. They are creating memory, not just through words, but through design, through order. In every brick, every tablet, every line, drawn in the dust, they are teaching the future what it means to be human. Far beyond Uruk in places, yet unborn others will follow this pattern. Egypt, with its pyramids and pharaohs, the Indus Valley, with its ordered streets. But it is here between these two rivers that humanity first dared to organize chaos, to shape divinity and destiny into city walls and temple steps. The moon hangs high above the ziggurat, now silver and silent. You stand at the edge of Uruk's walls and look across the plain. The wind smells of grain and earth. In that moment you realize that what began as a humble village by the water has become something immortal. Civilization itself has found its home. And as the last torches fade, you feel the ancient city breathing in the night, the soft, steady rhythm of a dream that will never truly end. The writing of the gods. The moonlight glints softly across rows of clay tablets, their surfaces pressed with tiny wedge-shaped marks. You can hear the faint scratching of reeds, the quiet murmur of concentration, as scribes sit cross-legged in the temple courtyard of Uruk. The air smells of oil lamps and damp earth. Somewhere nearby, water trickles down a canal. It is the hum of order, the sound of civilization learning to speak through stone and time. Here in this city of temples and towers, humanity is on the verge of its most wondrous invention, writing. Before now, the memory of people lived only in breath, in words, spoken stories, sung and names carried by those who remembered. But words fade with the wind and memories with the years. Grain harvests must be counted, debts must be recorded, offerings to the gods tallied and confirmed. And so from the need to remember what speech forgets a new language begins not of sound, but of signs. At first it is simple. Traders use small clay tokens to track their goods: a sphere for a jar of oil, a cone for a measure of grain, a disc for a flock of sheep. Then someone has an idea. Why not press the token into wet clay to make a mark instead of carrying the token itself? The marks remain when the clay dries, silent witnesses of a transaction. Over generations, these marks evolve into symbols. The symbols become patterns, the patterns sentences. You watch as a scribe dips his reed stylus into a jar of water, smoothing the surface of a fresh tablet. The light catches the lines of his face, young but patient, his fingers practiced. With slow precision he presses wedge after wedge, each stroke deliberate, rhythmic. These are the earliest cuneiform signs, a word that means wedge-shaped. The tablet before him is for the temple's records, 2 measures of barley for the workers, one measure of oil for the priests, 3 goats brought as offering. His task is not poetry, not yet, but it is still sacred. To write is to preserve, to give weight to the unseen. The Sumerians believed that words have power, and to inscribe them is to make them eternal. In the shadow of the ziggurat, a teacher instructs a small group of students. Each mark, he says softly, is the voice of the gods. The stylus is their tongue. Clay remembers when men forget. The children nod, repeating after him, practicing their first symbols. They do not know it, but they are shaping the foundation of all future writing, the seed from which will grow every alphabet, every poem, every law. Night deepens, the stars wheel overhead. The city of Uruk glows faintly in the distance, its streets quiet now, but never truly asleep. A temple bell tolls, once a reminder that the gods are watching. The scribes continue their work beneath flickering lamps, copying names, counting offerings, recording the rhythm of life. Their hands move like clockwork, each motion in harmony with the whispering wind. As the centuries pass, the symbols on the clay grow more complex. What began as records of grain becomes something far greater. The people begin to write not just what they do, but what they feel, hymns to the gods, laments for lost kings, prayers for the sick. The first libraries appear, rooms filled with tablets stacked neatly on shelves. Priests and scribes guard them carefully, for these are not mere documents. They are the thoughts of their ancestors, preserved for eternity. One night, you follow an old priest into the temple archives. The air is cool and heavy with the scent of clay. He carries a small lamp, its flame trembling as he walks. On the shelves lie thousands of tablets, each marked with cuneiform. He sets down the lamp and picks one at random. This one, he says, his voice trembling, is a hymn to Enlil, Lord of the Air, written more than 100 years ago by a scribe whose name is forgotten. And yet, his words remain. He reads softly, Enlil, great mountain father of all lands, your breath gives life, your word is law. When you speak, the fields bloom. When you sleep, the world holds its breath. The old man closes his eyes. Do you see? He whispers. Clay does not forget. And in that moment, you understand. Writing is not merely a tool. It is a bridge between worlds, between the living and the divine, between today and forever. In the markets of Uruk, merchants now keep tablets beside their scales. In the temples, priests record rituals and omens. In the palaces, kings issue decrees carved in clay and sealed with the mark of their seal, the earliest laws of humankind. The written word has become power, and those who can read and write hold the keys to order. But it is also beauty. Some scribes, weary of lists and ledgers, begin to carve tales of heroes and gods, stories passed down through generations, now fixed in clay for the first time. One such story speaks of a mighty king named Gilgamesh, who will seek immortality and find wisdom instead. Another tells of a great flood that once covered the world. Through these stories, the spirit of Mesopotamia will endure long after its temples crumble. As dawn approaches, the scribes finish their work. They place the tablets carefully in rows, covering them with fine sand to dry. When hardened, they will be stored in the temple archives, hundreds upon hundreds of tiny bricks of memory. The city stirs to life outside. Vendors open stalls, oxen pull carts through the narrow streets, and the river glimmers with morning light. You step outside and feel the soft breeze coming off the Euphrates. Behind you, the temple towers above the city, its top disappearing into mist. Inside its walls, the written word is alive, still wet, still new, still pulsing with divine intent. You realize that this simple act of pressing reeds into clay has transformed everything. The people of Sumer have given humanity a voice that will never fade away, to whisper across centuries, to speak to those not yet born. Their marks may be humble, their clay fragile, but the message within endures. We were here, we lived, we learned, we remembered. And as you listen to the river's murmur, you feel the quiet truth of that legacy. Writing is the memory of the gods, and through it, mankind has learned to dream forever. Kings, priests, and the sacred order. The morning sun spills over the flat roofs of Uruk, painting the clay walls in gold. Smoke curls from small hearths, mingling with the smell of bread and river reeds. The streets stir with quiet reverence, for today is not like other days. The city awakens to the sound of drums, deep, steady, ancient. A procession moves slowly toward the great ziggurat, where banners of blue and white flutter in the rising wind. At its center walks the king, flanked by priests in white linen robes, their heads bowed. You follow the sound of the drums to the temple steps. There, at the threshold between earth and heaven, the ceremony begins. The priests lift their arms to the sky, chanting to Anu, father of the gods, and Inanna, radiant queen of heaven. The king, his robe heavy with gold embroidery, places his hand on the sacred statue and whispers a vow to rule justly, to defend the people, to honor the will of the divine. In this moment, you see how the world of the Sumerians has changed. Once each man and woman answered only to the rhythm of the rivers and the turning of the stars, but now their lives are woven into a great web of power, a structure built not of stone, but of faith and duty. The city is no longer just a gathering of homes. It is a living body with the king as its heart and the priests as its breath. Here, religion and rule are one. The king is not merely a man, he is the earthly reflection of heaven's will. His authority flows from the gods like water from the mountains, and to defy him is to disrupt the order of the cosmos. This is divine kingship, and it will become the pattern for countless empires to come: Egypt, Assyria, Babylon, Persia, Rome. But it begins here in the dust and light of Sumer. The priests, guardians of the sacred, maintain the balance. Within the ziggurat they watch the stars interpret omens, record dreams. They speak in measured tones as though their words themselves might sway the heavens. Their knowledge is vast of the flood cycles, the constellations, the medicines drawn from herbs. They are both scientists and mystics, their wisdom a bridge between the mortal and the divine. You climb the ziggurat's steep steps, feeling the heat of the sun on the baked clay beneath your feet. From its summit, the world spreads out in all directions, fields like green ribbons, canals glinting in the light, the city below pulsing with life. The air smells faintly of incense. A high priest stands beside you, his eyes half closed, as he listens to the wind. The king rules the body, he murmurs, but we rule the soul. Below, the city continues its rhythm. The markets fill with sound, merchants shout in prices, donkeys braying laughter echoing through the alleys. In every home, small clay idols watch over the hearth. Each family prays to its own protector deity, Nisaba, the goddess of writing, Ninurta, the god of farming, Enki, the god of wisdom and water. The people's faith is as constant as the flow of the rivers. They offer bread and beer to their household gods, whispering thanks for the day's harvest and protection from disease. But faith has its shadows. When crops fail or storms strike, the people believe they have angered the gods. They bring offerings to the temple, grain animals, even jewelry, to restore the divine balance. The priests perform rituals, chanting long into the night, their voices blending with the wind. In flickering torchlight, you can see fear in the eyes of the people, but also hope, the kind that binds a community together when the world feels uncertain. The concept of justice begins to form here, born from this intertwining of faith and rule. The king is not simply a ruler, he is the caretaker of cosmic harmony, responsible for keeping balance between gods and men. Laws are proclaimed in his name. Disputes over land trade or inheritance are settled beneath his gaze, and the priests serve as witnesses. Over time, this sense of divine justice will grow into something monumental, carved not just in hearts but in stone. One evening, as the sun sets over the city of Lagash, you watch a new ruler ascend the throne, Urukagina, a king who claims not only the favor of the gods but a duty to protect his people from oppression. His reforms, recorded by scribes, limit the power of corrupt officials and protect the poor from exploitation. For the first time, justice is not only divine but moral, the belief that power must serve, not consume. The idea will echo through the centuries, resurfacing in Hammurabi's Babylon, and much later in every law written by humankind. As night descends, the ziggurat glows like a mountain of fire. The people gather in the square below, their faces lit by the dance of torches. The king stands before them, arms raised, his crown catching the light. He speaks of peace, of prosperity, of the blessings of the gods. The crowd kneels, murmuring prayers in unison. The sound rises like a river of faith flowing toward the heavens. You watch in silence, feeling the power of belief itself, how it binds thousands of hearts into one rhythm, one purpose. This harmony, fragile yet enduring, is what gives Mesopotamia its heartbeat. It is what allows strangers to become citizens, families to become nations. Beyond the city walls, the stars shimmer in the black sky. The priests will soon climb the temple stairs again to watch their slow procession tracing the paths of Jupiter, Mars, and Venus. They believe the gods move among these lights, guiding fate with invisible hands. And perhaps they are right, for even the stars seem to bow to the steady hum of civilization that has taken root here. You take one last look at the sleeping city. Its walls glow softly under the moon, its canals whisper to the fields, and its temples breathe the air of eternity. You understand now that Sumer's true greatness lies not just in its kings or priests, but in the invisible bond between them, between power and faith, heaven and earth, man and God. That bond, once forged, will never be broken. It will shape the rise of every empire that follows. For in the cradle of Mesopotamia, humanity has learned the most enduring truth of all, that the divine and the mortal are reflections of the same endless sky. The epic of Gilgamesh, the king who sought eternity. Night has fallen over Uruk, and the city glows like a constellation scattered across the plain. Torches burn in the courtyards, casting soft light on walls of sun-baked brick. From a distance you can hear the faint notes of a lyre and the slow rhythm of a drum. The people of the city have finished their day's work. The fields lie silent under the stars. Now comes the time of stories of heroes, gods, and the fragile thread between life and death. And no story in all Mesopotamia burns brighter than that of Gilgamesh, the great king of Uruk, 2/3 divine, 1/3 mortal, the man who sought eternity and found wisdom instead. You imagine the storytellers gathered near the temple steps, the air warm with the scent of oil and date wine. Children sit cross-legged at the front, their eyes wide. The elders lean on their staffs, nodding to the rhythm of the words. The story has been told for centuries, long before it was pressed into clay by the scribes of old. It begins as all great stories do, with pride. See the walls of Uruk, the storyteller says. See the foundation laid by Gilgamesh himself. No king before or after will equal his strength, his courage, his ambition. You see him then, Gilgamesh, tall as a cedar, his eyes sharp as bronze, ruling the city from his high palace. The people of Uruk revere him, but they also fear him. He is a man of unmatched power, yet restless and hungry for glory. He takes what he desires, commands as he pleases, and walks as if he were a god among men. The people cry out to the heavens, "O gods, give us a companion, for the king, that he may learn mercy." And so the gods answer. Far away in the wilderness, a man of clay and spirit takes form, Enkidu, wild and untamed, covered in hair, running with the gazelles. He drinks from the rivers, wrestles lions, and knows nothing of cities or kings. But the gods send him a woman, Shamhat, to teach him the ways of humankind. Through her kindness he learns to eat bread, to drink wine, to speak, and to dream. His wildness softens. He hears of Gilgamesh and feels drawn to meet him, not to bow, but to challenge him. When Enkidu enters Uruk, the people step back in awe. He is strong, fierce, and pure of heart. Gilgamesh meets him at the gates, and their eyes lock like mirrors. The two men wrestle dust, rising muscles, straining the city, watching in silence. But neither can defeat the other. At last, they stop laughing, exhausted, each seeing in the other what he has never known, an equal. From that day on, they are brothers. Together they embark on great adventures. They journey to the cedar forest to slay the monstrous guardian Humbaba, whose breath is fire and whose roar is death. They fight the bull of heaven sent by the goddess Inanna to punish Gilgamesh for his pride. They return victorious, crowned with glory. Uruk celebrates with music and feasting, but the gods are not pleased. They see hubris in the hearts of men who challenge the divine, and so they decree that one of the two must die. When the sickness comes to Enkidu, it is slow and cruel. You see him lying on a woven mat, his once strong arms trembling, his breath shallow. Gilgamesh sits beside him helpless. Brother Enkidu whispers, "We have angered the gods, but do not forget me." Then his eyes grow still, and the world falls silent. For the first time the great king knows fear not of enemies, not of war, but of death itself. The immortality he once assumed as his birthright slips through his fingers like water. He covers his hair in dust, wanders the wilderness, and cries out to the heavens, "Must I die too? Must I be like him? O gods, is there no escape from death?" And so begins his final journey, the quest for immortality. You follow him through endless deserts, over mountains, across roaring rivers. He seeks Utnapishtim, the man who survived the great flood, the one whom the gods granted eternal life. After many trials, Gilgamesh finds him living far beyond the edge of the world, where the waters of death lap against the shore. Utnapishtim listens as the weary king pleads his case. Then he sighs. "Gilgamesh," he says, "there is no permanence. The gods kept immortality for themselves. You cannot escape what was woven into your soul." But seeing the sorrow in Gilgamesh's eyes, he offers a test to stay awake for 6 days and 7 nights. Gilgamesh tries, but sleep comes like a tide. When he wakes, Utnapishtim shakes his head gently. "Even in wakefulness you are ruled by death." Before Gilgamesh leaves, Utnapishtim's wife takes pity on him and reveals a secret. Beneath the sea grows a plant that can make the old young again. The king dives into the deep, retrieves the plant, and holds it close to his heart. At last, he believes he has found the answer, but on his journey home, while resting by a cool pool, a serpent steals the plant away. As it slithers off, shedding its skin, Gilgamesh watches in despair. The gift of eternal life is lost, but in that loss, something shifts inside him. He returns to Uruk and stands before its mighty walls, the same walls that began his story. Their strength, their order, their beauty, these will endure after him. And suddenly, he understands, immortality is not for the flesh, but for the memory of what one creates, the deeds that shape the world. You hear the storyteller's voice soften as the tale ends. He carved his story in stone and set it upon the temple walls. And though the king is long gone, his name still lives: Gilgamesh, the man who sought eternity and found meaning instead. The fire crackles low. The night wind moves softly through the reeds. The children yawn and drift to sleep, dreaming of heroes, gods, and distant lands. The elders close their eyes, remembering the wisdom of ages. Above the stars shimmer the same stars Gilgamesh once followed across the endless desert, the same stars that watched over Uruk when its walls were young. And as you gaze upward, you realize the truth that Gilgamesh learned so long ago, that to be human is to love, to lose, to seek, and to remember. The rivers murmur quietly in the distance. The clay tablets rest in their shelves, carrying the story onward through time. Gilgamesh's voice and the voice of Mesopotamia will never truly fade. Floods, myths, and the hand of the gods. The sky over Mesopotamia grows dark and heavy. You can almost taste the change in the air, that uneasy stillness before the rain. The people of Sumer look up from their fields, watching clouds gather over the horizon like bruises across the heavens. The winds rise carrying the scent of the distant sea, and the priests hurry to the ziggurats' torches, flickering in the growing storm. They lift their hands toward the sky, chanting the names of the gods, for they know what is coming. The rivers once kind have turned wild. The Tigris and Euphrates, swollen by rains far to the north, surge over their banks, devouring everything in their path. Canals overflow. Fields vanish beneath churning brown water. Houses crumble, livestock scatter. Families cling to rooftops, praying that the flood will pass. You stand at the edge of this chaos and hear the cries that rise above the storm. To live between rivers is to live with both blessing and terror, for water is life, but it is also death. And it is from this eternal tension that one of the oldest and most haunting stories of humankind is born: the Great Flood, the tale of how the gods once washed the world clean. Long before it was carved into Hebrew scripture, long before the name Noah was spoken, the Sumerians and Akkadians told their own version of a man named Ziusudra, or in later tongues, Utnapishtim. The tale begins in a world that has grown loud, humanity in its youth, has multiplied and filled the land with noise. Their clamor rises to the heavens, disturbing the sleep of the gods. Enlil, lord of the air, grows weary of their ceaseless voices. They have forgotten reverence, he declares. Let the waters cleanse the earth. But Enki, god of wisdom and the sweet waters beneath the earth, loves humankind. He speaks softly into the dreams of one righteous man, Ziusudra of Shuruppak. Build a great boat, Enki whispers, and take aboard the seed of all living things. The flood is coming, but you will live. You can almost see him, a humble man, hands calloused from labor, standing before his home as the river swells. The villagers laugh at him as he gathers timber, smearing bitumen between the planks. He does not argue, he simply builds. For 7 days and 7 nights he labors beneath a sky that darkens more with each dawn. When the last beam is set, the animals are led aboard, sheep, goats, birds and dogs all trembling with instinctive fear. Ziusudra's family follows their eyes wide. The door is sealed with pitch, then the heavens open. The rains fall like judgment. The wind screams like a living thing. For 7 days the storm rages, tearing the trees from the earth, drowning fields, and swallowing the cities whole. The gods themselves, it is said, retreat in terror to the heavens, cowering before their own creation. The waters rise higher than any mountain, covering even the ziggurats. Inside the boat there is only darkness and the endless roar of rain. The family huddles together, whispering prayers to Enki. At last, on the 7th day, the storm begins to quiet. The waters still. The boat drifts in silence, rocking gently beneath the sunless sky. When the clouds finally part, Ziusudra opens a window. A single dove flutters out and disappears into the distance. When it returns, it carries in its beak a small branch, a sign that life has endured. Ziusudra weeps. He kneels and gives thanks. When the waters recede, the boat rests upon a distant hill. He steps out, offering grain and incense to the gods. Enlil, seeing that life still exists, is filled at first with anger, but Enki speaks for humanity, reminding him of compassion. And so Enlil blesses Ziusudra and his wife, granting them immortality and a home beyond the edge of the world. You listen to this story as it is told by the firelight of ancient nights, passed from tongue to tongue, carved into clay, carried by traders across lands and centuries. In time, it will become the story of Noah, of Deucalion, of every culture that has ever feared the wrath of the sky. But here in its birthplace, it is not just a tale of punishment. It is a story of renewal, of beginnings born from endings. The flood is more than water. It is a mirror of the Mesopotamian soul, their understanding of life as fragile, cyclical, and always bound to the will of the divine. Just as the rivers flood and recede, so too does human fortune rise and fall. Life is never owned, only borrowed. In the aftermath, the people rebuild. The fields are sown again, the temples repaired. On the high terraces of Ur and Eridu, the priests perform new rituals of gratitude. They pour libations into the earth for Enki, whispering thanks for his mercy. They burn sweet reeds for Enlil, praying that he may sleep peacefully and never again awaken in anger. You walk through one such ceremony. The air shimmers with heat. A young priestess kneels before a stone basin, pouring water over a small clay effigy of a man. The elders chant softly, the rhythm slow and steady. The act is symbolic, a reminder that humanity must always honor the balance between destruction and creation. Later that night, as the ceremony ends, you stand beside the river. The stars ripple on its surface like silver fish. The floodwaters have long since receded, leaving behind fertile silt. It is quiet now, deceptively so. You can almost feel the heartbeat of the earth beneath your feet, the same pulse that gave rise to myth. In these moments you understand why the flood story endured. It was not only fear that birthed it, but awe at the power of the world and at humanity's small, stubborn persistence. The Sumerians, who lived always at the mercy of the rivers, saw in the flood both the cruelty and the compassion of the gods. To them, survival itself was divine. The scribes who pressed these tales into clay did not merely record history, they recorded meaning. Each wedge-shaped mark was a reminder that nothing, not even destruction, is final. That every ending contains the seed of renewal. The night breeze moves softly through the reeds. You watch the reflection of the stars tremble in the water and realize that for the people of Mesopotamia, the gods were never distant beings in the clouds. They were in the rivers, in the soil, in the storm, and the silence that followed. The divine was everywhere, in wrath and in mercy, in flood, and in the first green shoots that rose afterward. And as the dawn begins to pale across the horizon, you hear once more the eternal whisper of the rivers, calm now, steady, forgiving. They have given life and taken it away. And yet they flow on, carrying with them the stories of gods and men of loss and renewal of a civilization learning to endure in the shadow of the divine. Akkad, the first empire. The sun rises over the plains of Mesopotamia, spilling gold across the distant reeds and canal waters. Centuries have passed since the first farmers settled between the rivers. The once small cities of Sumer, Lagash, Kish, Uruk have grown proud, powerful, and often at odds. Their temples gleam with wealth, their kings boast of divine favor, and their armies march beneath banners embroidered with the symbols of their gods. Yet the land is restless. Too many cities, too many rulers, too many dreams of supremacy. And from the north, beyond the Sumerian heartlands, a new voice begins to rise, a voice that will bind them all beneath one rule. You hear it first as a whisper, carried on the desert wind, Akkad. It is the name of a city, mysterious, powerful, its true ruins long lost to time, but also the name of an idea. It will be the first empire in human history, and its founder, a man of humble birth, will become legend. His name is Sargon. The story begins not in a palace but by the riverbank. The old texts say Sargon was born the son of a temple priestess and a father unknown. To protect him, his mother placed him in a basket of reeds, sealing it with pitch, and set it afloat on the river, a story that will echo centuries later in the tales of Moses and other saviors of destiny. The basket drifted until it was found by a gardener who raised the boy as his own. From these humble beginnings, Sargon grew strong and clever. He became the cupbearer to the king of Kish, a position of great trust. But ambition burned in him like a hidden flame. When the time came, he rose in rebellion, gathered soldiers to his cause, and seized the throne. The gods, he claimed, had chosen him to unite the lands of Sumer. You can almost see him standing before his soldiers on the dusty plain, the heat shimmering around him, his bronze spear glinting in the sun. His voice carries like thunder across the assembled ranks. The gods have given me victory. The rivers themselves will bow before Akkad, and so begins the march Sargon's armies move swiftly through the land, conquering one city after another. Uruk falls, then Lagash, then Umma. Each city, once a rival kingdom, is brought beneath his banner. But instead of destroying them, Sargon binds them together not as scattered rivals, but as one realm under Akkad. The scribes begin to record his new title, King of Kish, King of Sumer, and Akkad, King of the Four Quarters of the Earth. It is a claim that echoes through eternity, the first man to rule not merely a city, but a world. You follow the armies north along the Euphrates. Dust swirls beneath the hooves of horses and the wheels of chariots. The soldiers sing as they march, their bronze helmets gleaming. In their wake, canals are repaired, roads built, trade routes opened. The empire breathes one people, one tongue of administration, one dream of unity. Yet Sargon's rule is not merely conquest. He is a visionary of order. He establishes the world's first standing army, loyal not to a single city, but to the empire itself. He appoints governors in every region, his daughters and trusted officials, to oversee temples and collect tribute. One of his daughters, Enheduanna, becomes the high priestess of the moon god Nanna in Ur. It is she who gives the empire its soul. In the temple's shadow by lamplight, Enheduanna composes hymns in praise of Inanna, goddess of love and war. Her words are lyrical, fierce, divine, lady of all powers, rising in light. Your command is supreme. Your word is law. She is the first known author in human history, her name preserved across 40 centuries. Through her voice, the power of Akkad becomes not only political, but spiritual, an empire blessed by the heavens. Still power breeds envy. Sargon's empire stretches wide from the Persian Gulf to the mountains of the north, but such vastness carries strain. The conquered cities murmur in resentment. The priests of old Sumer bristle at Akkadian dominance. They whisper that Sargon's arrogance offends the gods, and in time famine follows. The rivers shift their paths, the canals silt over, the unity of Akkad begins to tremble. Sargon's sons succeed him, but none carry his strength. The empire, though mighty, has become fragile, too large to hold, too new to endure. From the highlands to the east come new invaders, the Gutians, fierce tribes who sweep through Mesopotamia like a desert wind. The cities fall silent once more. The great imperial dream fades into ruin. Yet even as Akkad itself disappears into the dust, its legacy remains. The idea of empire, that many can be ruled as one, that unity can bring order from chaos, will never vanish. From Babylon to Persia, from Rome to the modern age, the echo of Sargon's vision endures. You walk among the ruins of forgotten cities, feeling the stones still warm with memory. Somewhere beneath your feet lies the lost city of Akkad, swallowed by centuries, its walls erased, but its story alive. The scribes' clay tablets buried in sand still speak of the empire that once rose above all others. They tell of roads and armies, of temples and taxes, of faith and fear, of the first great experiment in power. As dusk falls, you stand by the river where Sargon's mother once released her infant son. The water moves slowly, smooth and ancient, reflecting the pale light of the setting sun. The reeds rustle, and you imagine that tiny basket drifting once more, fragile, uncertain, yet guided by destiny. Empires will rise and fall, kings will come and go, but the river flows forever. The lesson of Akkad is not merely ambition, but impermanence, the truth that no matter how high humanity climbs, The current of time will one day carry all things away. And yet somewhere in that flow, Sargon's dream remains the dream that people can be more than tribes and borders, that the will of a single mind can bind nations together. In that dream you hear the first heartbeat of empire, strong, defiant, and eternal. The night settles over the plain. The last light glints off the surface of the river, turning it to molten gold. You listen to the silence, and in it you can almost hear the echo of marching feet, the soldiers of Akkad still moving through time, still carrying the banner of the first great king. Babylon, the city of heaven and earth. The centuries drift like sand along the Euphrates. The empire of Akkad has crumbled into dust, its memories scattered among broken tablets and fading prayers. Yet from that same soil, under the same endless sky, another power stirs, one that will shine even brighter, last even longer, and leave behind a name that will never fade. You feel it before you see it, the heartbeat of a new city rising in the southern plain. Its name is Babylon Bab-Iluk, Gate of the Gods. The morning air hums with the sound of hammers of workers mixing mud and straw into bricks. Canals shimmer like mirrors, their waters flowing beneath half-built bridges. The city grows daily, brick upon brick, tower upon tower. It is said that the gods themselves guide the builders' hands, that the spirits of ancient Sumer and Akkad have returned to bless this new creation. At its heart stands a massive temple tower, a ziggurat so tall that its uppermost terrace vanishes into the clouds. The people call it Etemenanki, the house of the foundation of heaven and earth. To them it is a stairway between the divine and the mortal, where priests climb each dawn to greet the sun and offer incense to Marduk, the new and supreme god of Babylon. You stand at the foot of the ziggurat and look upward. The air smells of burning cedar and honeyed oil. The staircases rise in wide, winding paths lined with glazed bricks painted deep blue. Carved into the walls are scenes of creation, the gods shaping the world from chaos, the rivers flowing from their divine hands. The story told here is ancient but renewed. In the beginning all was water and darkness, until Marduk, warrior of light, fought the sea dragon Tiamat, the embodiment of chaos. From her defeated body he formed the heavens and the earth. From her blood he made mankind to tend the temples, to praise the gods, to bring order from the void. In this myth, the Babylonians find their identity. Marduk is not only their god, he is their symbol, the reflection of their destiny to bring structure to a world that forever teeters on the edge of chaos. Beneath the shadow of the great ziggurat lies the royal palace, a labyrinth of marble halls and fragrant gardens. Here rules Hammurabi, the lawgiver king of Babylon, whose name will echo across ages. You see him seated upon a high throne of polished stone, his eyes calm and shrewd. Around him gather scribes, judges, and priests, each carrying tablets inscribed with the words of his decrees. For Hammurabi is more than a ruler. He is an architect of justice. He orders his scribes to carve his code, the code of Hammurabi, into a tall pillar of black basalt, so that all may see and remember. You walk closer and read the words etched in the ancient cuneiform. If a man destroys the eye of another, his own eye shall be destroyed. If a man breaks another's bone, his own bone shall be broken. If a builder makes a house that collapses and kills the owner, the builder shall be put to death. It is harsh, yes, but beneath its severity lies something profound, the idea that law, not power, should rule. that justice flows not from the whim of a king, but from the order of the gods. Hammurabi raises his hands toward Marduk's temple and proclaims, "Let the strong not oppress the weak. Let justice shine upon the land as the sun upon the fields." In that moment, civilization takes another step toward reason. You walk through the city at dusk. The air is sweet with the scent of date palms and incense. Musicians play lyres in the courtyards, while vendors sell bread, beer, and honey cakes from their stalls. The people of Babylon live well, artisans, merchants, scribes and priests, all bound together by the rhythm of their laws and the favor of their gods. The river reflects the city's lights shimmering like molten gold beneath the rising moon. You see barges loaded with timber and grain gliding silently under arched bridges. Beyond the walls, vast fields stretch into the distance, the empire's lifeblood. From the Persian Gulf to the Zagros Mountains, all bow to Babylon. Its wealth is unmatched, its wisdom admired even in distant lands, and yet amid this grandeur you sense an undercurrent, a tension that hums like a taut string. The same ambition that raised Babylon may one day undo it. The priests grow proud, the nobles hungry for power. The king's successors will inherit a city too rich, too splendid, too heavy with its own perfection. The gods who once blessed Babylon will in time turn away. But for now, under the gentle glow of torchlight, Babylon is eternal. You wander through its gardens, past fountains that murmur in the night. Lovers stroll beside pools lined with lotus and papyrus. The air is alive with fragrance, myrrh, jasmine, and cedar. The walls around the palace shimmer with glazed tiles depicting lions, dragons, and bulls, guardians of divine order. Every corner of the city seems touched by artistry, by devotion, by the belief that heaven can be mirrored on earth. In the temple precinct, a priest lights a flame at the altar of Marduk. His voice rises in chant, "O Lord of Lords, Judge of all creation, may your fire burn in our hearts as it burns in the heavens. May Babylon stand forever beneath your gaze." The people bow their heads, touching the ground. In that silence you hear the beating of countless hearts, farmers, scribes, mothers, children, all joined in the same rhythm, the same faith, the same dream. It is a moment of perfection, fragile as the surface of still water. You know that the centuries ahead will bring war, conquest, and ruin, that one day even Babylon's towers will crumble into dust. But tonight it lives bright and complete, its reflection, stretching across the calm waters of the Euphrates. The wind carries the scent of the desert and the faint, distant sound of bells from the temple spire. The stars above burn cold and eternal, just as they did over Sumer and Akkad. Beneath them, the gate of the gods gleams, the city of heaven and earth, the heart of a world that has learned to dream of eternity. And as you close your eyes, you can almost hear the whisper of its walls. We were the light between the rivers. We rose where the gods once walked. We were Babylon, the hanging gardens and the dream of perfection. The air over Babylon shimmers with heat, yet even under the sun's fierce gaze, the city gleams with splendor. Its walls rise higher than any before them, so broad that chariots race along their tops. Blue glazed tiles catch the light like water, and at every gate carved lions seem to breathe beneath their coats of golden paint. Beyond these gates life moves in a rhythm of beauty and order, the hum of markets, the laughter of children, the distant murmur of temple chants. But there is one wonder here that surpasses them all, one that poets whisper about, and travelers swear by in hushed awe. It is a sight so extraordinary that it will echo through millennia as one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. The hanging gardens of Babylon, the dream of perfection made real. You first glimpse them at dawn, the mist still clings to the river, and the first light of morning paints the sky in gold. Rising above the palace walls is a mountain of green, tier upon tier, of trees, flowers, and flowing water. It is as if a forest has taken root in the heart of the desert, suspended in the air, reaching toward the heavens. Palm fronds shimmer in the wind, vines spill down over terraces of stone, birds flit through the canopy, singing above the hum of falling water. The story says it was built for love. Long after Hammurabi's reign, when Babylon was ruled by mighty kings again, there came one who sought to please a foreign queen, Nebuchadnezzar II. His empire stretched across Mesopotamia, a golden age of art, architecture, and power. His queen, Amethyst of Media, came from the mountains of the north, where the air was cool and the hills were wrapped in forests. But in Babylon all she saw was dust and heat. Her heart longed for the green valleys of her homeland, so the king, moved by love and pride, commanded his builders to raise a mountain where no mountain stood. You walk now among those gardens. The air is cool and fragrant, heavy with the scent of cedar and myrtle. Streams of water flow through channels carved into the stone, fed by a hidden system of pulleys and screws that draw water up from a Euphrates below, an engineering marvel for its time. The sound of trickling water fills the air, mingling with the rustle of leaves. You can hear laughter echoing from a shaded terrace, where the queen walks in her flowing gown, her hands brushing the petals of lilies and jasmine. From her perch above the city, she looks out over Babylon, the vast plains, the shining river, the temples and towers gleaming beneath the sun. My Lord has built me the mountains, she whispers, so that I may not forget home. Below the workers toil to keep the paradise alive. Slaves haul buckets, gardeners prune the vines, engineers tend the gears that lift the water. For them the garden is not luxury but labor. Yet even they pause sometimes to marvel at what their hands have made. The sight of green leaves against blue sky, of water falling, where once there was only dust, it is proof that mankind can shape beauty from hardship. You wander deeper through the terraces. The air grows humid, filled with the smell of wet soil and flowers. You pass cypress and fig trees, pomegranates bursting with color, and date palms heavy with fruit. Butterflies dance above the blossoms. For a moment you forget the desert beyond the city walls, forget even that this is the work of men, not gods. The garden feels eternal, like the paradise that ancient texts promise awaits the righteous after death. The scholars of later ages will argue whether these gardens truly existed. Some will call them myth, a tale too perfect, too dreamlike to be real. Others will claim they were not in Babylon at all, but in Nineveh, the capital of Assyria. Yet as you stand amid the cascading greenery, the question of truth seems almost unimportant. For what matters most is the dream itself, the yearning to bring life to the lifeless, to create harmony between nature and human hands. This dream of perfection defines Babylon. The same spirit that raised its ziggurats and carved its laws now builds a mountain of living green. It is the same impulse that drives artists to paint, poets to write, and kings to rule wisely. It is the human desire to reach beyond survival, to shape beauty and meaning from the clay of the earth. You step onto the highest terrace where the Queen's pavilion stands. The wind cools your face, carrying with it the faint scent of rain. From here the city stretches in every direction, the Euphrates winding like a silver ribbon through the fields, the distant desert shimmering under the sun. The cries of merchants rise faintly from below, mingled with the call of temple bells. Beside you stands a gardener, his hands stained with earth. He speaks softly, almost to himself. The rivers give life, he says, but only man teaches them where to flow. His words linger in the air like prayer. Evening falls and the gardens glow beneath the torches that line the terraces. The falling water catches the light, turning to liquid fire. The Queen and her attendants recline beneath woven canopies, their laughter mingling with the songs of musicians. Below, the people of Babylon look up at the glowing terraces and feel pride for the glory of their king, for the favor of their gods, for the wonder that crowns their city. Yet, like all human marvels, the garden's beauty is fleeting. The centuries will pass. The walls will crumble, the water will cease to flow, and the desert will reclaim the land. But the dream, the vision of a paradise built by mortal hands, will endure. It will find new life in stories, in scripture, in every garden that men and women tend as an act of hope against time. You descend the terraces, slowly, the sound of falling water fading behind you. The night is warm, the sky deep and star-filled. From the riverbank you turn once more to look upon the hanging gardens, their silhouette rising against the moonlight, a miracle of stone and green, born from love, from longing, from the endless human desire to touch heaven. And in that soft darkness you understand Babylon's greatest wonder was never its walls or temples, but this, the dream of perfection, the belief that beauty could bloom even in the heart of the desert. The Tower of Babel, when languages fell apart. The dawn over Babylon breaks with a blinding brilliance. The river shines like molten bronze. The city walls cast long shadows over the plain, and the ziggurats rise like stairways to the heavens. The people move through the markets and temples in quiet rhythm, priests chanting, merchants calling, scribes recording grain and silver on clay. It is a time of peace, a time of pride. Babylon has become the heartbeat of the known world. Yet beneath that pride stirs a restless dream, the same dream that has always haunted humankind, the desire to reach the divine, not through worship, but through will. You hear it first as a rumor whispered among the workers in the temple courtyards. The king, they say, has spoken of a tower, one that will pierce the clouds and touch the realm of the gods. The idea spreads through the city like fire through dry reeds. A tower so tall that even the gods must look down to see it. A monument to human greatness. At first it is only a murmur of imagination, but soon plans are drawn, orders issued, laborers gathered. Clay is mixed, bricks are fired by the thousands, and the work begins. You stand at the edge of the great construction site. The air trembles with the clang of tools and the rumble of carts. Workers move in endless procession, carrying baskets of mud brick on their backs. The smell of tar and burning pitch fills the air. Overseers shout orders, their voices echoing against the rising walls. The tower grows slowly at first, then faster, reaching higher and higher with each passing season. At its base, priests offer sacrifices to Marduk, to Enlil, to all the gods who watch from above. They bless the project, declaring that this tower will be the link between earth and heaven, the ziggurat of ziggurats, the Etemenanki reborn. And yet, as the years pass, the prayers begin to change. What was once an offering becomes a boast. "We are the children of the gods," says one mason looking up at the colossal structure. "We are greater," says another. "We build not for them, but as them." The tower becomes more than stone. It becomes a symbol, a monument not to faith but to ambition. From the plains beyond the city, you can see it even from miles away, a spire of mud brick and shimmering glaze its top, vanishing into the haze of clouds. Travelers speak of it in awe. Surely, they say, mankind has found a way to heaven, but not all are pleased. The priests uneasy whisper that the tower has angered the divine. For to reach heaven by human hands is to challenge the order of creation itself. And so they pray for mercy, for humility, for some sign that their people might remember the balance they once knew. One night, as the city sleeps, a storm gathers on the horizon. The air grows thick, heavy with electricity. Winds whip through the streets, tearing at banners and scattering dust. Thunder rolls across the plain like the footsteps of giants. From the top of the tower, lightning strikes not once, but again and again, splitting the sky open. The next morning, the tower still stands, but something in Babylon has changed. You walk through the marketplace and hear it first, in the voices, confusion, hesitation. Two men who worked side by side can no longer understand one another. The words that once carried meaning now twist into sounds unknown. The more people speak, the less they comprehend. Soon the entire city is overcome with chaos. Workers shout at each other in strange tongues. Builders drop their tools in frustration. The scribes find their records meaningless. The merchants cannot trade. The priests cannot perform their rituals. Even the songs in the temples fall into discord. The people cry out to the gods, but no answer comes. In time, the workers abandon the tower. The fires in the kilns go out, the scaffolds fall silent. Dust gathers over half-built terraces. The once proud monument now looms over a city divided by language and confusion, and so the great dream collapses not with fire or flood, but with the quiet unraveling of understanding. In later centuries, the story will be told again and again. The Hebrews will call it the Tower of Babel, and from it they will draw a lesson that human pride invites divine correction, and that unity cannot be built on arrogance. But here in the land where it first unfolded, the story carries a gentler meaning, not punishment, but protection. The gods, the priests say, scattered the tongues of men so that no single people would again presume to rival the heavens. Diversity became the safeguard of humility. Each language a melody of its own, teaching humankind that power lies not in sameness, but in difference. As the years pass, the tower erodes, the rains wear down its bricks, the desert wind carries its dust into the fields. Travelers from distant lands will one day stand among its ruins, wondering if the tales are true. They will find fragments of glazed brick, each one marked with the ancient script of Babylon, and marvel at the audacity of those who tried to build eternity. You walk among those ruins now. The sky above is vast, limitless. The stones beneath your feet are warm from the sun. You imagine the voices that once filled this place, countless tongues all speaking at once, all dreaming the same dream. You realize that in their failure they achieved something profound. They reached not heaven, but the heart of what it means to be human, to strive beyond limits, to fall and to remember. The wind moves softly through the broken arches. The sound almost seems like speech fragments of every language that will ever exist, whispering to one another across time. Babylon still stands in spirit, not as a single voice, but as a chorus of many. And as you gaze upon the empty sky, you sense that perhaps the gods were not angry at all. Perhaps they simply wanted to remind humanity of a deeper truth, that heaven cannot be built with brick and bitumen, but with understanding, compassion, and the endless desire to reach upward together. The tower is gone now, its shadow swallowed by the earth. Yet the story endures in scripture, in song, in every word ever spoken by humankind. The dream of Babel still lives, rising and falling in every generation, every language, every voice that dares to ask, how high can we go before the sky turns us back? And in that question whispered softly beneath the stars, the spirit of Babylon continues the longing to touch eternity and the wisdom to remember what it costs. Assyria, the storm of iron and fire. The rivers still flow through the Mesopotamian plain, but the world has changed. Babylon's glory flickers like an ember in the wind. To the north, beyond the green valleys and into the rugged highlands, where the Tigris carves its narrow course, a new power gathers strength. It does not grow softly like the Sumerian fields, nor rise gracefully like Babylon's ziggurats. It grows like a storm. Its name is Assyria, fierce, disciplined, and born of conquest. You travel northward along the Tigris, the land narrowing into rocky ridges and hills. The air here feels colder, harder, as though even the wind has been tempered by iron. There on a slope overlooking the river rises the ancient city of Ashur, named for the god who watches over it, a god of war and dominion. It is from here that the Assyrians will forge an empire unlike any the world has seen before. At first, they are traders and hunters, men of the mountains, their lives built around survival. But the mountains breed endurance, and the rivers teach them cunning. Over centuries they grow organized builders of fortresses, tamers of horses, wielders of bronze and later iron. When the time is right, they will descend from these hills like thunder rolling over the plains. Their first great king, Ashur-uballit, expands the borders of the old city-state into an empire. He unites the tribes under one banner, his soldiers disciplined, his chariots swift. In battle, the Assyrians move like a single creature, thousands of men advancing in formation, their shields locking into walls of bronze. When they march, the earth trembles. When they speak, it is with the voice of command. You walk through their camp as dawn breaks. The fires are still smouldering. The soldiers polish their weapons in silence. Their armor gleams dully in the half-light. There is no music here, no prayer, only the clatter of iron and the smell of oil. The Assyrians do not seek beauty in their works, but permanence. They believe that through strength comes order, and through order, peace. From Ashur their power spreads outward to Nineveh, Kala Nimrud, and Dur-Sharukin, the splendid capital built by Sargon the Stand. Each city becomes a fortress of stone and glory, its palaces covered in carved reliefs depicting lions' chariots and winged deities. You walk through one of these palaces now, the air cool and shadowed. The walls around you are alive with images, soldiers storming cities, kings standing over defeated enemies, the gods watching from above with inscrutable calm. Every carving is both a boast and a warning. We are the chosen of Asher. Defy us and be forgotten. But amid the harshness there is brilliance. The Assyrians are engineers and artists as much as warriors. They build vast road networks that connect their empire from the Persian Gulf to the Mediterranean Sea. They construct aqueducts and canals that carry water across impossible distances. Their cities blaze with color walls painted red, blue, and gold statues of winged bulls guarding every gate. And above all, they gather knowledge. In Nineveh, the mighty king Ashurbanipal establishes one of the first great libraries in human history. Within its walls lie more than 30,000 clay tablets, hymns, laws, omens, and epic poems, including the Epic of Gilgamesh itself. You step into the library's shadowy halls, the smell of dust and clay thick in the air. A scribe bends over his tablet, the stylus clicking softly. He works not for beauty, but for eternity. This, he says quietly, is our empire's true weapon. Words outlast walls, and yet outside those walls the world trembles beneath Assyria's might. Their kings see war as divine duty conquest, not for greed, but for cosmic order. To them rebellion is chaos, and the sword is the instrument of law. When cities resist, they are crushed utterly. The Assyrian armies carve their victories into stone rows of captives, towers of skulls, rivers running red. Their cruelty becomes legend, feared from Egypt to Anatolia. But even empires of iron are mortal. Power, once absolute, breeds pride, and pride breeds decay. After centuries of conquest, Assyria's heart grows brittle beneath the weight of its own ambition. The provinces revolt. The conquered peoples unite against their masters. From the east, the Medes gather. From the south, the Babylonians rise again. You stand on the walls of Nineveh as the horizon burns. The air is thick with smoke, the roar of battle unending. The city that once seemed immortal now trembles beneath the fury of its enemies. The statues of winged bulls, the guardians of the empire, stand cracked and scorched by fire. The Tigris runs dark. Inside the royal palace, the great library burns. The clay tablets, the knowledge of centuries, bake in the flames, some shattered, some hardened forever by the heat preserved by destruction. Ashurbanipal's dream of wisdom survives, but the empire that built it dies, screaming. By morning, Nineveh is ash. The Assyrians vanish into history, their name cursed in later ages, their deeds spoken with both awe and dread, but their legacy endures. The idea of organized empire, of centralized administration of roads, writing and order, all will pass to the Babylonians, the Persians, and the empires yet unborn. Even their artistry, so fierce and deliberate, will echo in the monuments of future kings. You walk through the ruins, now your footsteps soft in the dust. Broken stones lie scattered like bones, their carvings worn but still vivid. A winged bull watches you with eyes of empty stone. The wind moves through the shattered arches, whispering words in a language long dead. For a moment you imagine what it must have sounded like, the clang of armor, the chant of soldiers, the roar of victory. You imagine the pride that once filled this place, the certainty that their empire would never fall. And then, like the wind itself, it is gone. Above the sky stretches vast and pale. The rivers, eternal as ever, flow past the ruins. Their waters carry silt and memory, the dust of cities, the ashes of kings. You realize that even the fiercest storm must one day exhaust itself. The Assyrians called themselves the chosen of Asher, the servants of divine order. Perhaps they were. For through their rise and fall, humanity learned again the oldest lesson of the rivers, that power is a current, not a possession. It flows where it will, lifting one kingdom and drowning the next. The wind sighs through the ruins, and you turn toward the south, where the plains of Babylon shimmer faintly on the horizon. The storm has passed, but the cradle of civilization still breathes. Another dawn waits beyond the smoke. And so, as the rivers whisper on the world, begins anew the fall of Babylon and the coming of Persia. The sun rises once more over the vast plain of the two rivers, but its light falls upon a weary land. The empires that once thundered here, Sumer, Akkad, Assyria, have all turned to dust. Yet one city still gleams upon the horizon, its towers and temples reaching proudly toward the sky. Babylon endures the eternal heart of Mesopotamia, the city of gods and kings. Its walls are broad and strong, its gates plated with bronze. The people walk its avenues beneath banners of deep blue and gold. Merchants still crowd its markets, priests still tend its fires, and the river still flows through its heart like a thread of life. The great Ishtar Gate, dazzling with lions and dragons, stands as a symbol of Babylon's divine protection. But though the city glitters, its spirit has grown brittle. Pride and luxury have replaced purpose and reverence. The kings sit in marble halls, surrounded by music and wine, while their armies wither at the borders. The descendants of mighty Nebuchadnezzar II rule, now kings of ceremony, not vision. And beyond the eastern mountains, a new power rises quietly, patient as dawn. Its name is Persia. From the rugged lands of Anshan, a man of cunning and humility gathers his people under one banner. His name is Cyrus, called by history Cyrus the Great. Unlike the warlords of Assyria or the proud kings of Babylon, he does not boast of conquest for its own sake. He speaks of unity, of mercy, of order, and the gods, it seems, favor his words. You travel with his army as it crosses the plains of the east. The men march with discipline, but without cruelty. The conquered are not enslaved, but welcomed. Their temples spared, their gods honored. Cyrus believes that the divine is not bound to one people alone. The gods of all nations, he says, are guardians of the same heaven. By the time his banners reach Mesopotamia city after city opens its gates without resistance, they have grown weary of Babylon's arrogance, weary of kings who care only for splendor. Even the priests whisper that Marduk, the great god of the city, has turned his favor toward the Persian king. The night before the final approach, you stand by the Euphrates. The air is warm, the sky heavy with stars. Babylon's walls glow faintly in the distance, its towers casting long shadows over the plain. The river murmurs softly beside you, a sound older than any empire. Somewhere within its flow you feel the pulse of destiny. When Cyrus moves against Babylon, he does not strike with fire or siege. Instead, he turns to the wisdom of the land itself. His engineers divert the waters of the Euphrates into hidden channels, lowering the river's depth till his soldiers can wade across its bed. Under the cover of darkness, they enter the city through the river gates, unguarded, for who would expect the mighty Euphrates to betray its people? By dawn it is over. The city awakens not to battle but to silence. The soldiers of Persia move through its streets without bloodshed. The temples are left untouched, the statues of the gods garlanded instead of destroyed. The people gather in wonder as Cyrus himself enters. Through the great gate, his robe plain, his face calm. He does not proclaim victory, he speaks instead of renewal. Marduk has called me to restore peace to his city, he says. Let each man return to his home, and each god to his temple. Let no people be oppressed. And so Babylon falls not with flames but with words. You walk beside Cyrus as he visits the ziggurat, bowing before the altar of Marduk. The priests astonished bless him as chosen of the gods. He orders the rebuilding of shrines, the return of sacred statues that Babylon's armies once stole from conquered lands. His scribes record his decrees on a clay cylinder, the Cyrus cylinder, which will one day be called the world's first declaration of human rights. In its inscription you read, I return to their places the gods who had resided in Babylon. I gathered all their people and returned them to their dwellings. May all the gods whom I have restored bless me. The empire of Persia is born not from fear, but from understanding. Under Cyrus and later under his successors, Darius and Xerxes, the world will be bound by roads, laws, and languages, a harmony of many nations under one rule. And yet, as you wander through Babylon's streets after its quiet surrender, you feel both awe and sorrow. For though the city will live on as a jewel of the Persian realm, something in its soul has dimmed. The flame that once burned with pride and invention now flickers gently, content to rest. The great ziggurat of Marduk, once reaching toward the heavens, crumbles slowly beneath the weight of years. In the evening, the river reflects the last light of day gliding past the palace walls. You stand at its edge and listen to the murmurs of the people, not cries of rebellion, but songs of relief. The conqueror has brought peace, and the gods have allowed it. Yet beneath the calm, you sense the eternal pattern, rise, fall, and renewal. The current that carried Sumer, Akkad, and Assyria has now lifted Persia, and one day it too will sink again into silence. High above the stars emerge one by one, ancient and indifferent. The priests light their lamps on the temple steps. The city breathes softly in the night. You turn to look back once more at Babylon. Its walls, its gates, its towers, they still gleam faintly under the moonlight as though trying to remember their former glory. But you know the truth, even the mightiest city must bow to time. Still its influence will never vanish. Its gods, its laws, its stories, they will pass westward, carried in the minds of traders and scribes, shaping the thought of Greece, of Rome, of every civilization yet to come. Babylon may sleep, but its dream will outlive it. The wind rises from the east, carrying with it the scent of cedar and sand. The banners of Persia flutter softly. The conquerors and the conquered kneel beneath the same stars, and for a brief moment the world feels whole. The rivers murmur as they have for thousands of years, their voices steady and wise. And you know as you stand beside them that another chapter in the story of humanity has turned gentle, inevitable, and eternal. The legacy of Mesopotamia. Night settles once more over the lands between the rivers. The flickering lamps of Babylon burn low, and beyond its walls the ancient plains lie silent beneath the stars. The empires have risen and fallen like the tides of the Euphrates, Sumer, Akkad, Assyria, Babylon, Persia. Their kings are dust, their temples ruins, yet something still endures here, something invisible but everlasting, the legacy of Mesopotamia. The first breath of civilization flows quietly through time, shaping everything that comes after. You stand beside the riverbank where reeds sway in the breeze, and you realize that the world we know still carries the mark of this place. The sound of running water mingles with memory, and as you listen, you begin to hear it. The voices of those who once lived, dreamed, and built upon this soil. Their echoes reach forward, whispering through the centuries. It begins with writing the first of all their gifts. The cuneiform of Sumer, those small wedges pressed into clay, were the foundation of human memory. Before them there was only speech and forgetting. After them came history itself. Every alphabet that would follow from Phoenician to Greek, from Latin to Arabic, was born from that first act of preserving thought in stone and clay. You picture the scribe's hand, steady and patient beneath the lamplight, pressing meaning into eternity. And then there was law, the heartbeat of order. The code of Hammurabi, carved in basalt, became the prototype for all justice to come, that the weak must be protected, that the powerful must answer to principle, that society depends upon fairness written in lasting words. Its spirit still lives in every courtroom, every written constitution, every notion that right and wrong must be balanced upon a scale. From their temples and towers came mathematics and astronomy gifts born from necessity, refined into art. The priests who studied the stars to mark the seasons gave the world the division of time, 60 seconds to a minute, 60 minutes to an hour. The same sexagesimal system they devised still governs every clock that ticks today. They charted the heavens, named the constellations, and predicted eclipses with a precision that astonished later ages. To them, the universe was a living map of divine design, and in seeking to understand it, humanity took its first step toward science. Their architecture reshaped the landscape. From the humble ziggurat grew the idea of sacred geometry, a building that connects earth and sky, where each tier rises closer to the divine. That same yearning would later be reborn in the pyramids of Egypt, in the temples of Greece, in the spires of Gothic cathedrals reaching toward the heavens. The impulse that raised the ziggurats has never left us. It still lives in every skyscraper that pierces a modern skyline. Their agriculture turned wilderness into abundance. By taming the unpredictable floods of the Tigris and Euphrates, the Mesopotamians invented irrigation, the art of guiding water to obey human will. From that came surplus trade and the first cities. The fields they tilled became the blueprint for every civilization that followed from the Nile to the Indus, from the Yellow River to the Mediterranean. The world learned from their rivers how to live as one people, rooted to the earth, yet reaching for the stars. Their religions, too, left deep marks upon the human soul. The pantheon of Mesopotamia, Anu the sky, Father Enlil the lord of the air, Enki the god of wisdom, Inanna the goddess of love and war, shaped how later peoples would understand divinity. In their myths, humanity was born of clay and divine breath made to serve, but also to wonder. These stories would ripple outward, finding new form in the tales of Genesis, in the Psalms of Israel, and even in the prayers of Islam. From them, the world inherited the idea that creation itself is sacred, and that the divine speaks through destiny. You walk among the ruins now, where fragments of stone bear faint traces of cuneiform. The air is still and warm, the smell of dust and old earth heavy around you. The ziggurats have crumbled, the statues of the gods lie toppled, But as the moonlight brushes across their broken forms, you see not ruin but continuity. The stones themselves seem to breathe the heartbeat of a civilization that never truly died. Through the centuries, their discoveries traveled outward. The Greeks learned geometry and astronomy from Babylonian scholars. The Hebrews carried stories of creation and flood that began in Sumer. The Persians adopted their laws and the Romans their systems of governance. Even the art of empire, the use of roads, record-keeping tribute and tolerance, came from the experiments first tried in these river valleys. You close your eyes and imagine time flowing like the river beside you. You see scribes in Alexandria studying tablets of Sumerian text. You see medieval monks dividing hours into minutes by the Mesopotamian clock. You see modern astronomers still naming the stars by the same constellations mapped here thousands of years ago: Leo, Taurus, Scorpio, Aquarius, all born beneath these skies. The people of Mesopotamia believed that life was a fragile thread stretched between chaos and order, that humanity's task was to keep that thread unbroken. In every age we continue their work, building, recording, dreaming, trying to bring meaning to the vast silence of the universe. Their civilization was never simply a beginning. It was a lesson written in the language of earth and time. As dawn begins to brighten the horizon, you stand on the riverbank and watch the light spill across the plain. The same light once touched the faces of Sumerian farmers, Akkadian kings, Babylonian priests, and Persian soldiers. It glows on the same soil, nourishes the same reeds. The world has changed beyond recognition, yet the rhythm remains. The rivers still flow, the stars still turn. You pick up a small fragment of clay from the ground, perhaps once part of a tablet, perhaps just a broken brick. The marks upon it are faint, but you can feel them beneath your fingertips, the texture of memory itself. Somewhere in those tiny lines is the story of all humankind, of how we learn to remember, to build, to speak, to believe. The wind stirs gently, carrying the scent of the water and the faint murmur of unseen birds. The ancient land seems to whisper, "We taught you how to be." You place the fragment back upon the earth and let the river's song fill your ears, soft, steady, eternal. The gift of Mesopotamia is not its monuments or its empires. It is this, the enduring heartbeat of civilization, the faith that human hands can shape meaning from the chaos of the world, and that knowledge once kindled will never fade. The cradle sleeps. Night drapes itself gently across the plain between the rivers. The last embers of sunlight fade beyond the western horizon, and a silver moon rises over the ancient land, the same moon that shone upon Sumer's fields, upon Babylon's towers, upon the ziggurats and palaces that once touched the heavens. The wind moves softly through the reeds by the Euphrates, and all is still. The great cradle of civilization, the land that gave birth to history itself, now rests in silence. You walk slowly through the ruins. The earth beneath your feet is warm and uneven, scattered with fragments of once grand walls, broken pottery, and half-buried inscriptions. What remains is not desolation, but peace. The voices that once filled these cities of kings, of scribes, of farmers and priests have quieted, yet you can almost hear them still murmuring like distant waves beneath the soil. Time has covered their dust with its own, but the pulse of what they began endures. The ziggurats are now flattened mounds of clay, their stairways long vanished. The statues of gods once burnished in gold once worshipped with offerings and prayers, lie shattered among the grasses. The rivers, though changed in their courses, still whisper their ancient names. The Tigris runs swift and narrow, the Euphrates broad, and slow their waters weaving together like twin threads of memory. You pause to look out across the plain. The stars shimmer above, reflected faintly in the river's dark surface. It is as if the heavens themselves bowed to gaze upon their reflection, a reminder that long ago humankind first learned to look upward here, to measure the paths of those same stars and find patterns in the infinite. It was here that people first wrote, first ruled, first dreamed of gods and eternity. Here that they learned to shape the earth to their will, to build, to plant, to calculate, to remember. The world beyond has moved on. New empires have risen and fallen. New faiths have taken root. New languages have filled the air. But every story, every law, every letter written by the human hand still traces its ancestry to this soil. You kneel beside a half-buried tablet, the grooves of cuneiform faint but still visible beneath the dust. The marks seem almost alive, the handwriting of time itself. You wonder who made them, a young scribe, centuries before Christ, pressing his stylus into wet clay under the flicker of an oil lamp, never knowing that his work would outlive empires. You imagine his quiet concentration, the soft sound of the reed, the stillness of that moment suspended forever. The air grows cooler as the night deepens. From somewhere beyond the river comes the faint sound of wind over distant dunes. The desert is slowly reclaiming what was once green, yet there is beauty even in its encroachment. The silence feels sacred, as if the earth itself were sleeping, not dead, but dreaming. You remember the myths that were born here of creation, from chaos of floods and renewal of gods who shaped man from clay and breathed life into him. Perhaps you think the story was never meant to end in ruin. Perhaps this stillness is only the breath between chapters, the pause before life begins anew. In the small villages that still cling to the rivers, farmers rise before dawn just as their ancestors did. They turn the same soil, plant the same barley, draw water from the same canals. They do not think of Sumer or Akkad, of Gilgamesh or Hammurabi. Yet through their hands the rhythm continues. Civilization does not end, it transforms. The heartbeat of Mesopotamia still echoes in the footsteps of every child born under the same stars. You wander further to the high mound that once was the city of kings and moon worshippers. The wind hums softly through its stones. The temple of Nana, the moon god, is long gone, but the moon itself, pale and serene, still hangs above it, untouched by the passing of thousands of years. The light bathes the landscape in silver, revealing the faint outlines of canals, walls, and courtyards that once thrived with life. For a moment you can almost see them again. Farmers guiding oxen through the flooded fields, women carrying water jars, children laughing in the dust, priests ascending the temple steps at dawn. The vision flickers, then fades, leaving only the quiet sound of wind and water. The cradle sleeps, but sleep is not the same as death. Civilizations like rivers flow and change. They vanish from sight only to return elsewhere, carrying traces of their beginnings. The spirit of Mesopotamia, its wisdom, its yearning, its awe before the divine has flowed outward through time, shaping the very foundation of what it means to be human. It lives in the words we write, the laws we follow, the constellations we name, the cities we build. It lives in the memory of our striving, in every act of creation, in every question whispered to the stars. The people of the two rivers taught us that to live is to seek meaning, to build, even knowing that one day the walls will fall, to remember even when memory fades. You sit by the edge of the Euphrates as the night grows quiet. The stars shimmer overhead and the moonlight ripples on the water. Somewhere far away, a jackal calls its voice carried by the wind. The air smells faintly of dust and jasmine, the scent of ages mingled with eternity. You close your eyes. The sound of the river is steady, soothing. You imagine it as a lullaby, one that has sung to humankind since the beginning, gentle and unbroken. In its rhythm, you hear the stories of all who came before the scribes of Sumer, the kings of Akkad, the builders of Babylon, the soldiers of Assyria, the dreamers of Persia. The river flows on, carrying their memories toward the sea, where they will join the infinite. The cradle sleeps not in silence, but in peace. Its children have wandered far, scattered across continents and ages, yet every one of them carries a spark from this place, this first home of human thought and wonder. The night deepens and the stars seem to draw closer, their light falling softly upon the plain. The wind stirs the reeds, whispering one last song through the darkness, a lullaby for the world's first dream. You take a slow breath, and as the sound of the rivers fades, you feel it, that eternal pulse beneath the surface of time. The heartbeat of Mesopotamia still strong, still endless, still alive. And in that hush between worlds, you let the story rest. The cradle sleeps, but its dream continues.